We are going to start out by looking at quantities of money and what we can buy with it, starting with a dollar. For the most part, a dollar can't get you much. Sure, there are stores filled with cheap little items you can buy for a buck, but it isn't something that you can live off of. So we're going to start with something small, like a Snickers bar. Let's move up to $10. Now we can buy items such as clothes, as long as we aren't going for anything name brand, or even a decent meal from a restaurant. Another bump up to $1,000. Now we're actually getting somewhere. We can use this to buy ourselves a new MacBook. $1 million. That little stack right there is made up of $100 bills, and is the amount of money the average worker in the United States will earn in about 23 years. Now, I'm sure we've all thought about what we would be able to buy with $1 million. Sure, we could buy lots of smaller things, perhaps 1 million of those Snickers bars. But what if we wanted to spend it all at once? Well, we could get ourselves a yacht. Or, if the ocean isn't your thing, there's some nice big houses on sale for a mere $1 million. Moving on, we reach $1 billion. Now it's becoming a little more challenging to find items which we can spend all of our money on at once. We can only afford about 45% of a B-2 bomber, or about 60% of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Or how about we take a private jet to an airstrip where a helicopter will take us to a private villa on the beach with our own staff who clean up and wait on us for only $28,000 a day. And with our $1 billion, we could do this every day of our lives. Or how about we buy our own cruise ship for a little over $500 million, leaving us the other $500 million to pay for fuel and staff for the cruise ship. As if $1 billion wasn't hard enough to imagine, with 1,000 billion we're up to $1 trillion. Keep in mind that those are stacks of $100 bills, and we've even double stacked the pallets. Think of it like this. If you worked from the age 25 to 65, or 40 years, putting in 40 hours every single week, you would need a job that paid a little over $130,000 a second if you wanted to make $1 trillion. However, you can then use that to give every worker in the U.S. 11 additional weeks of paid vacation. In fact, $1 trillion is roughly equivalent to all the goods and services produced in Australia in an entire year. Let's look at these in terms of growth rates. Here are the rules we're going to follow. First of all, you are very persuasive. Your entire life you manage to convince others to pay for everything, such as food and clothes, and you can save all of your hard-earned cash. Second, you get paid every second. None of this every 2 weeks stuff. And last, the amount of money you currently have can easily be determined by a single equation. For example, we're going to begin with a logarithmic growth rate, and the money you have is modeled by 252 times log base 10 of x. 252 is just an arbitrary coefficient, and doesn't really matter in the long run. So after 1 second, you'll have $0. 10 seconds and you have 252 times log of 10, which is $585.25. At 100 seconds, you're up to $1,160.50, and so on. So it takes just a little over a second before you have enough money to buy a Snickers or a meal. However, to get to that MacBook, it will take around 9,300 seconds, or 2 hours and 25 minutes. So we went from just over a second for $10 to nearly 2.5 hours for $1,000. However, the jump from 1,000 to 1 million is even larger. So large, in fact, I'm not even going to include it on this graph. To reach $1 million, it would take about 1.8 times 10 to the 3,968th power seconds. That would be this number. To be honest, I don't even know if there's a name for this number. I think it's safe to say, however, that there's no way you will live long enough to earn $1 million. Let's move on to linear growth rate. This would be something like getting a job and having the same pay rate for your entire life. It takes only a fraction of a second to get that candy or food, and only about 4 seconds to reach the MacBook. You can actually reach the house this time in about 4,000 seconds, or an hour and 10 minutes. After a 46-day wait, you'll have enough money for that cruise ship. And if you manage to work for 126 years, you will have wealth comparable to Australia's annual GDP. Now your wealth is measured using the quadratic equation 252x squared. Within 2 seconds, you can afford the candy, the meal, or the MacBook. And now it only takes a little over a minute to reach $1 million for that house, a big improvement over the last two growth rates. After about half an hour, you'll be up to $1 billion. And 17 hours later, you'll reach that $1 trillion mark. You just went from matching Australia's GDP in a little over your lifetime to matching it within a day. But we can get even faster using an exponential growth rate. It takes a mere 32 seconds before you've accumulated enough money to afford any of these items. I've made a table of the time required for each item using each growth rate here. Feel free to pause the video if you want more time to look at this. Growth rates that increase very quickly are great when you're earning money, but what if we look at it in terms of runtimes and memory usage? For example, say that we have an algorithm, perhaps the sorting algorithm, and it has a quadratic runtime of n squared, where n is the number of items it is given. So we want to sort 100 items. It could take 100 squared milliseconds, which ends up being 10 seconds. As we saw previously, quadratic functions grow rather quickly, so when we give it 10,000 items to sort, it could take 10,000 squared milliseconds, or a little over a day. I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait a day for my applications to sort. What about if we have to work with 1 million items? You're looking to wait about 32 years for that to finish. The problem is, a large amount of information is handled like this all the time. For example, hotels or travel agencies handle thousands if not millions of reservations daily. They need to be able to find a reservation out of millions of others in seconds, not years. Search engines such as Google have to address this issue as well. Google searches, sorts, indexes, and prioritizes billions of web pages using very efficient algorithms, so that when you go to search, the results are displayed to you in a fraction of a second. Here is a table of the most frequent runtimes you will encounter with your algorithms. They range from best being constant, where the algorithm will finish in the same amount of time regardless of the input size, to exponential, which can get out of hand very, very fast. I've also included some potential runtimes to give you an idea of how they compare. Actual runtimes will vary, but the rate of growth should be about the same. One of your goals while programming is to choose algorithms that are as efficient as possible. Don't make your users wait on your quadratic runtime when you can implement it in linear. I can guarantee that they won't be happy.